working. So as I was saying, today we will talk on, it's the meat and potato of project management, and this is very, very important. Everything is important, but some aspects of project management are critical. And although we started the project with allocated budget, we might have uh, some study that we conduct before uh, um, uh, starting the project, and even starting the planning for the project. But still, we need to estimate times and costs for each work package. Remember when we talked about work breakdown structure? This is very, very important to learn how to do work breakdown structure. Some of you shared some documents with me. There is approach to do the work breakdown structure based on the different phases of the project management. So you are in the planning phase, the execution phase, and the executing phase, and then closing, and so on. There is no one approach to work on your work breakdown structure. There are different ways that we can do. But the best way is to start with the deliverables. What this project will deliver at the end of the project management cycle. What are the deliverables? Some of the deliverables will be tangible, like a specific product, a software, and some will not be so tangible. When we talk about services or event, for example. So you start with the big project deliverable, and you divide these deliverables into sub deliverables, and you go and you keep dividing it. As I said before, sometimes we use nouns, sometimes we use verbs. Verbs to explain or to show that this is a task. There is some sort of an action the team member will do. Sometimes we do a noun if we are talking about a deliverable or a sub-deliverable, a component of the project. How many levels you go down? For the group assignment, I said only 5, but in some cases, you might go to the 20th level or even 50th level, because there are so many components and there are so many tasks related to the project. Of course, in adaptive methodologies like Agile, like Scrum, in the IT, you might not have enough information at the beginning of the project to design this definite, specific work packages. You are exploring this, and you are creating the tasks along the way. That's why you need a more flexible approach. But in some fields, some industries, no, you have to start with something very, very definite, very, very specific. There are so many factors that will play a significant role when you are estimating the project times and costs. So we will talk about these one by one. We will talk about some some concepts and some methodologies or methods that we use, but I want you to reflect on your own work and your own career. You might not work in project management, but I have a feeling that almost all of you had a role in estimating task times or costs in a way or another. Maybe at the department level. So each department, they create their annual budget, for example. So they will think what we are doing this year, what are the special projects that we are doing, what's what we call business as usual or operations that we are doing. So you might find yourself very, very familiar with what we are talking about. Um, so again, very important to emphasize that your estimates are very important because they will be used in different ways. That's why you need to make sure that your estimates are as accurate as possible. Um, in the PMI, there is a guide called earned value calculations, because we will create some baselines for the project, a cost baseline, a schedule baseline, and as a project manager, you will uh, evaluate the progress of your project against these baselines. Where am I? So you want to start with a sound estimates. Of course, that there are some guidelines that we will talk about. There are different approaches to estimating these values, different methods. And again, every and each industry might have some best practices in this. So this is part of a research. They were asking of the project started in your organization in the past 12 months that were deemed failures. What were the primary causes of those failures? And see some of the causes of why projects fail. Task dependency, team member procrastination, inadequate resource forecasting, limited or taxed resources, taxed means overused, inexperienced project manager, inaccurate task time estimate, resource dependency, inadequate sponsor support, poor change management, inaccurate cost estimates, opportunities and risks not defined. Inadequate vision or goal for the project, inaccurate requirements gathering, change in project objectives, change in organization's priorities. You will find that some of these causes or reasons why projects fail might be due to poor definition of the project. Last time we talked about scope and why we have to guard the scope. This is in case that we did good due diligence in the beginning in defining the scope. Some of these reasons will be very related to the quality of estimates that we do. You can see that there are several times dependency was mentioned, task dependency, resource dependency. Again, this is related to the work breakdown structure. So when we do the work breakdown structure, we can assess which task is dependent on another task or tasks. So let me use very, very easy example. If, you know, uh, making pizza at home, for example, this is an example for a project. Why? Because it's a temporary endeavor. You start with some requirements. You have resources, and there is a deliverable or a unique result. So actually, cooking pizza at home, it is a project. So you cannot, for example, add the fillings of the or the toppings of the pizza before creating the crust or the base. I'm not a very good cook, you know. So the base. So you have to finish the base before adding the toppings. So some tasks in your project will be dependent on other tasks. So you need to have this when you are estimating the times and estimating the critical path, for example, for your whole project. Also, you need this to allocate sufficient resources for each task. Um, so that's why estimating times and costs is very important. Here is another.
Hello, Professor. Can I ask?
Hi.
Yeah, because of this estimate, can we see the estimated months is 6 months in our project?
Um, what do you mean estimated 6 months? You
The timeline that you gave is 6 months.
yes, yes,
So I'm
you
thinking is the 6 month it should be declared before we see it is finished, or just like building, if we build a building it should be checked by engineer, everything they will declare okay before we can see it's all done, or just the structure of the building and it's finished.
well, in project management, you have to start with some constraints. Remember, we talked about constraints before. So there is some preliminary study for the project that will say, okay, a project with this size could be finished in 6 months
Yes, but
within this budget. So you start with some constraints. Here we are talking about estimates for each and every task that you will do along the way. So how long exactly, for example, the excavations will take? Let's say it will take 1 week. When we will start this task? When it will end? Because, for example, we cannot pour the foundation before we finish this task. So here, when we are saying estimates, we are estimating every work package.
uh,
How long will it take and how much will it cost?
yeah, like
Yeah.
our in our group, we are
Mhm,
planning to have the solar system for a green
mhm,
energy.
mhm.
So we are planning that, can that be timeline for 6 months, or
Yes, yes, yes. So your estimates has to cover um, all the different phases of the project.
start the 6 month is started from planning to structure, like that?
Um, no, this is the timeline for the execution of the project,
Okay.
not the project management cycle. Because, for example, there are some phases of the project management that will start and might end before even starting the project itself. For example, if you are doing a business case, if you are doing a feasibility study, this will start before the project itself. It's part of the project management. And the output of these phases will be part of the inputs in for the project, but it these phases happen before um, um, the kick-off meeting, for example, for the project. So the kick-off meeting, the project manager will have enough information to share with the team members. This is the plan for our project that will officially start in a week, for example. These are the communication plan, these are the risk management plan, these are the quality management plan, these are the cost baseline. This is the time baseline, this is the schedule, uh, this is how we will allocate resources. And then we work on the project itself. Have I
Oh,
answered your question?
oh yeah. How about my group mates? Are you there? Who can ask question because we are discussing this in our group and
So your project will take 6 months to execute, to finish, but you might be working 6 months before the starting date, for example.
oh, so that's not
Yeah,
included. Okay.
yeah, maybe working on the planning, maybe working on soliciting the requirements, maybe doing some tests, for example, for the location that you will decide for your solar farm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you, Professor. I need to ask this early because anytime
yes,
I
yes,
need to run because I have an appointment for my
yes,
winter course and tomorrow is holiday and next week and I'm traveling. So anytime
yes,
while having this live session.
yeah.
Thank you.
Uh,
So basically, planning is not included in the 6-month window we have for the project execution.
yes, yes. The 6 months you are given is for the execution. Yeah. So, and by the way, if you have any questions, you can communicate with me through uh, WhatsApp or maybe my email.
Yes, I send you some.
Yes, I know, and that's why when I'm talking, I'm using the question that I have received from different students.
Yeah, so we will
Yeah.
ask you first before we can continue or we'll change it while there's still time.
Yes, that's why I'm not sure if it is your team. You based your work breakdown structure on the different phases of the project.
Yeah, the sustainable cities.
Yes, so I think it's the best to do it based on the deliverables. So what's the end goal of this project? What's the main deliverable of this project? It's the solar farm, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So and you start by um, uh, dividing these deliverables into their components.
Yeah, yeah, and you provide an example of Masahara in UAE, and I can get what is that.
Yes, Al Masdar. Yes.
I must know, yes.
Yeah, it's a city. It's a big city. It's a huge, actually, project. That, for example, this Al Masdar city in the UAE, the project itself is the whole city. But within this project, there are so many projects, other projects eh, that's working, and we can see this actually in real life when your project might have sub projects. For example, procurement for big projects might be it's their own project, or the design. Imagine, you know, the design work, its own project, because how complicated these projects are. So any question?
No, I
Okay.
get your point, Professor. I don't know to my batch.
No, it's okay. You will have more questions once we keep working on this. So this is something very common, overruns. So for example, here is an example from metro projects around all over the world, and 47%, no, 77% of the projects have a cost overrun. It means that we estimated the cost of this project to be 100, and to complete the project we needed 120, for example. Also, schedule overruns. 63 of the metro projects around the world faced schedule overruns. It means that we estimated that this project will just need 6 months, and actually, you know, it took 10 months, for example. So this is very, very common to have these overruns. That's why you need to estimate the cost very well. And part of the cost estimates is based on the risks of the project, because you will have contingency budgets. If you will face such risks, you need to use these contingency plans and contingency budget to respond to these risks. What if you face risk that you did not estimate or calculate or think of? Companies have something called the management reserve. So if you are working with the top management, you might be familiar with these terminologies, or maybe it's called something else in your organization, but usually these are the common terminologies, because the financial sector is very stable and the terminologies are the same all over the world, because most of the countries, they use the same standards, especially those companies that are public or listed in the stock market, and they have auditors to audit their financials. So there is the management reserve. Usually, as a project manager, you don't have authority to use the management reserve. It's either the sponsor or maybe someone higher from the executive management or the senior management will have access to the management reserve. But in general, you need to estimate your cost and schedule well. So what's estimating? I'm not sure. When we were young, we used to play a game called estimation. It was very, very popular among those who study engineering in my university. So it's a process. There are so many steps included in this process, and we try to forecast or approximate the time and the cost that we need to complete the project deliverables. Also, there is a huge factor of trade-off. That's why I always remind you with the constraints of the project, because as a project manager, you have these constraints that you have to work within. And you try to balance the benefits with the costs. We try to be accurate as much as we can. We might include some safety factors in estimating these numbers. and we will see the different methods that we use. So there are there are two types of estimates: top down or bottom up. So, and we will see how we actually do these things. So the bottom up, we start with the smallest element in the work breakdown structure. Top
Sorry, Dr.
down,
Hanan,
yes.
I raise my hand, and
Yeah.
I don't want to go like further before asking this question,
Oh,
please.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
I didn't see this. I'm
yeah, no,
looking
no
at
worries.
my, yeah.
So my question is there any maximum percentage of the contingency, like funds in the or the management reserve? Is
Yes,
there
yes,
any maximum percentage of the project total?
yes. Usually there are some guidelines within the organization, and it's related to the risk tolerance and risk appetite of the organization. So they will tell you the contingency reserve shouldn't exceed 20% of the project total, up to, for example, $1 million. So yes, there are some guidelines for this. If you are asking about a universal best practice, no, I'm not aware of this, because each industry will include varying degrees of risks, because actually wrong estimates is a risk. So hopefully I answered your question.
Yes, thank you. Because so what came in my mind, if the project like over runs,
Mhm.
so there will be costs associated with the extra time,
Yes, yes.
and in case the funds are like the project is like out of funds, so the project
Mhm,
will stop, and then
mhm,
we go to the second level, which is the management reserve. Correct?
mhm. Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's why I was asking if there is any maximum like percentage of the
It
contingency
depends
fund.
on the policies and the guidelines of each company, and as I said, it's related to uh, how big or small the risk the company is willing to take. Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah. So we will see that we have different ways to estimate the costs and the times. So this is a summary of all or most common ways to estimate. So we have the analogous estimating. We use this method when we have a previous in similar projects. For example, we are building a compound, and we have done this project before. Um, we have some solid information, some lesson learned from previous projects. So we use our experience from previous project to estimate the time and cost for future projects. Another way is bottom up. So we start with a very detailed, or as detailed as possible, work breakdown structure until we reach the smallest work package, and we start estimating and accruing these numbers up. So, for example, when I was working in real estate development, the smallest package was 1 week or 100 work hours. When I moved to consulting, actually my boss, he used the 30 minutes uh, work packages. So because he was tracking our times as consultants, so he needed to know exactly how many hours did we spend on certain tasks, and he went all the way down into 30 minutes. So I until this moment, I am scheduling my time 30 minutes by 30 minutes because I was used to do this. But you cannot do this in bigger projects, like mega projects, or even construction projects that are not mega projects. You will do it with like 100 hours work package. Uh, or parametric estimating, and we will talk about all of these in detail. So it's, again, we divide the project into elements, but not based on only on the work packages. And some other method, I even use it in my real life. We call it the 3 points or the 3 scenarios estimates. So the best case scenario, the realistic scenario, and the worst case scenario. And we have these 3 points to guide our way to estimate these numbers. So in a nutshell, estimating times and costs is very, very important for you as a project manager, because you need to take decisions, and you are taking decisions almost every day. So you need inputs and you need reference points to take your decisions. You need to schedule the work. You need to determine how long the project should take and its cost. Sometimes you need to use these numbers in the feasibility study and building your business case. Maybe it's not feasible to do this project altogether. Also, you need to manage the earned value. And if you are a member at the PMI, you will find a guide that you can download called Earned Value Management. Because along the way, when you are managing your project, you keep comparing the actual state with the baseline. So are we over budget? Are we behind schedule? So you need to take like a snapshot of the project at any given time, and to understand, are you on the right track for progress or not? So as I said, we have different ways to estimate. The selection of the right method depends on several factors. It depends on the information that you have and the data you have. And also it depends on the capability of this method. So, for example, expert judgment, this is one of the methods. So you have one of your team members that they worked in similar projects. So they will tell you, okay, this will cost us XYZ. So again, it's based on assumptions more than facts, and it's quick, and we call it dirty. We mean that it's a rough cut. Now I remember my professor, and when he was explaining to us the rough cut, and he said that if you go to a tailor, you know, back in the day when people went to tailors, and they before cutting the expensive fabric, they used some cheap fabric to create like a dummy for, let's say, the jacket or something, and they do this rough cut, and they keep adjusting it on the body of the person, or it's dirty. It means that it's not so precise. Uh, Again, the 3-point estimate, we might have more information, but again, the accuracy and the level of detail is less until we reach the bottom up estimate. This is the most accurate way to estimate the times and the cost. And it all starts with a very, very good work breakdown structure. So to decide which method to use, again, there are some factors. If you are planning for a long-term project, you might not have accurate information that or data that cover the whole span of the project horizon. So you will have lots of estimates. For example, some of the material, we know that the prices will go high, but how high? Is it 10% high, 20% high, 50% high? We don't know. Or maybe the availability of these material. So again, the planning horizon will affect the way or the method that you will select for your estimates. The complexity of the project, if we have so much elements in the project, the team and the availability of the team, or the quality even of the team members. The project structure, is it part of the bigger organization, or is it a dedicated team? Padding estimate, this is the safety factor that we keep. It's like a cushion that we have in the project. So for example, instead of estimating it as $100, I will estimate it 110. So I will add some padding in case that I'm wrong or something like this. The organizational culture, some again risk averse, some risk averse organizations might need more accurate calculation than other organizations that have a higher risk tolerance. And other factors like the policy, the procedures, or some mandates that you have to follow. So we said it's a process, and each process has its inputs, outputs, and tools, and techniques and activity that we use. So some of the inputs that you will need to do the estimating, the project documents. You might need to have some experts in your team. You have to decide on which estimating technique that you will use, or techniques, because you might use different techniques in one project. It depends on the availability of the information, for example, for this particular deliverable or sub-deliverable. The assumptions that you are using, some additional influences. Maybe the top management is telling you, you know what, we cannot have, as you asked before, more than 10% management reserve, for example. So any risks that you did not plan for, if it is more than 10%, we are in a big trouble. From experience, and then you will design your estimating approach, and the output is what exactly the estimation and how we did it, and the final estimates. So in when you are working in a predictive methodology like like waterfall, and it's not that flexible, and you start with a well-defined project, it's totally different than working with a adaptive methodologies like, as I said, Agile or Scrum, when you don't have all the information up front, when you don't have all the requirements up front. So even the way you estimate the costs and the tasks, times and costs, it need to have this flexibility built in your approach. So you start with collecting initial requirements, and you know that these are not all the requirements, or it's not very very well defined. And you estimate the product size, the software, and then you estimate the effort to do all the components of your product or your software, and then you work on the project schedule, and based on this you estimate the cost. um, uh, you approve the estimate, and see that the arrows, they are feeding each other, because you will do this cycle several times along the way when you are working on the project. But in predictive approaches, you cannot do this. I always use the example of building a building or creating a software. In creating a software, you can have this iterative approach to go back and forth. So maybe after a month or 2 months, we have more information. So I will start the cycle again, and I will go with more requirements, and then I will keep estimating and adjusting the estimates along the way. Of course, there are some inputs. So historical data, we can find this in almost all projects and all methodologies. The resources available. In each stage, you might have a better view of the cost data. Of course, you will do some analysis, and you will approve these estimates from the sponsor or from the senior management. Um, so each organization will have some sort of guidelines for estimating times and cost and resources. In these guidelines, you will learn who is responsible for what. Maybe there is a mandate to have different estimates from different people. Or sometimes in big projects, they will have independent consultants, and they come and they help with the estimation, and we use their inputs to compare our estimates with their estimates. You might have some guidelines describing the normal conditions. So, for example, we are working in here in the city that I live in. There was a big metro project, and during winter, there were no work at all on this project, and they only worked in the other seasons. So maybe there is some conditions that you have to adhere to. Time units. The example that I gave, I worked in organization where we use the 30 minutes as our basic time unit, and in another organization when 100 hours was the basic time unit that we used. Independencies, what is dependent on what. Contingencies, of course. Risk assessment is huge when you are estimating costs and times. So as I said, we have the top down and the bottom up. And again, when you are selecting the method that you will use for estimating, you have to see the advantages and disadvantages of each approach and decide which one is best for your project. So the top-down estimates are usually derived from someone who uses experience or information. Um, uh, uh, we start with basic knowledge. So, you know, analogous is very common way for top down because we did this before. When you do some renovation in your house and you hire someone and they come even before taking any measurements, they will tell you, I think retrofitting this bathroom will take $10,000, and then they start working the numbers. But from their experience, they know a project with this size will cost this. It's sometimes made by the top managers or top management who have very little knowledge of the component activities used to complete the project. And in real life, yes, it happens. And so the senior management or the top management will tell you this project, we allocated a $500,000 budget for this project. And you know that's why there are some negotiation. That's why you need the sponsor of the project to be very strong, because they will negotiate with the senior management, and maybe they can change their mind and get you better budget. The bottom up, it's more work, but it's more accurate. Usually we start with a top-down estimate, and we have the budget for the project. And in the planning phase, we do more accurate calculations, and actually in the execution phase, we will have the actual numbers that we already spent. So that's why you might find that you are using different ways or methods for estimating the cost and the times along the way the project. It can serve as a check on cost elements in the work breakdown structure by rolling up. So that's why you start with a well-defined work breakdown structure, because you will start from the bottom, the smallest work packages, and you will accrue these numbers up or roll it up. It provides the customer with an opportunity to compare the low-cost efficient method approach with any imposed restrictions. So in many cases, the customer will tell you why this cost is high. And you will say, no. See, these are the cost elements, and we have to calculate this, and we have to consider this, and so on. So this is a comparison between the two types of estimates. And of course, the differences will be related to strategic decision making, how important the cost items, the risks associated with this project, and the uncertainty degree of this project. The way you use for small projects is different than the way that or the method that you use for a bigger project. Also, the type of contract that you are using. In general, we have two types of contracts. We have fixed price contracts, and we have cost plus contracts. So fixed price, it's a lump sum, and the risk is at the seller. So if your company is the buyer, you buy the services, the cost, the risk is on the buyer, sorry, on the seller, because they might have estimated this project as a fixed price lower than the actual cost, or there are some variables that they did not consider. The cost plus risks, contract risks, usually on the buyer, so your company, because the seller might overestimate the costs, or if you are working with scummy companies or something like this, so they might charge you more than the actual cost that costed them, plus a percentage or a fixed number to cover their profit. Also, the customer, some customer, they want detailed inputs. Also, the stability of the information that you are using, and also the stability of the scope itself. So these are, you know, factors that will affect which method to use. So of course there are, you know, some advantages, some disadvantages, and preferred ways or situations to apply certain methods. So the analogous or the top-down approach, when we use our experience from previous projects, we use the data that we have or the experience. So we don't need lots of data. We base our estimate on actual data that we have from the previous projects. It's quick, but for the weaknesses, the subjectivity, and also there might be some changes in the economy, for example, or the items that we are using, or the mandates that we have to follow. We've been using a material, and the government said this material is no longer acceptable, and so you need to change it to a different material, and this is a new material we have not used before. So when to use it? When you don't have enough data. Again, it's a rough cut or a dirty estimate, and you use it for cross-checking, you know. So this is not the actual cost estimates. So we use it maybe in the beginning, or maybe when we don't have enough information. Bottom up, we can audit this easily because we base our estimate on the actual work packages. It's sensitive to many rates. It's not only labor rates. So it's sensitive to all the information that you used for these estimates. If something changes, it might change the whole estimate. It needs lots of work, and it takes time to do it. And most of the time, you will not be able to do it by yourself. You need team members. You need some representative from finance or the legal department, so you can all work on the budget or the costs of the project. When to have it? When you need certain more accurate cost estimates, when you use these estimates in negotiating, and negotiation here is not only external. We have some internal negotiation with the top management as well. Parametric, we will divide the project into parts. Oh, some people are joining now. Okay. Yep. So we divide the work into categories, and this way we have more information, and we don't have much bias when we are estimating the costs. So we have different ways. These are all different different ways. That's why there are no one way to estimate this, but for the sake of your group assignment, I will encourage you to do it. No, not encourage you. I will ask you to do it bottom up. So you will start with your work breakdown structure until you reach the level 5. The elements at level 5 will be considered your work packages, and you will calculate the times for the tasks associated with these work packages and the cost of these work packages. Okay. So here is, for example, how you do this. So you have your work breakdown structure. You might start with allocating some percentages of the budget, or maybe the other way. So if you work top down, you will say, okay, based on previous projects, usually the design takes up to 20% of the budget. The test and quality assurance takes about 40% of the budget, and so forth. The bottom up, no, you will reach the lowest level of your work breakdown structure. You will estimate the actual numbers based on the information that you have, and then you start building your cost structure up. So this is from the PMI, the PIM book, the Project Management Body of Knowledge. So to estimate any activity resources, as I said, it's a process. So you need inputs, you need you will generate outputs, and you will use some tools and techniques. Some of the inputs, the project management plan, resource management plan, scope baseline, some of the project documents like the activity attributes. So these are the specific information that we know about each activity list. Some cost estimate that you've done, the resource calendars, and it will show the availability of resources, the risks of the project, and enterprise environmental factors. This is not the environment in terms of air, soil, and trees. No, this is the business environment. So with the PMI, enterprise environmental factors might mean some standards from outside the company, or some information that we get from the industry itself. So something from the outside, some mandate from the government, for example. Organizational process assets, these are the policies and procedures and guidelines that you have internally. So these are all your inputs. And you will use certain tools and techniques like expert judgment, bottom-up estimating, analogous estimating, parametric estimating, data analysis. Not all of these tools and techniques that you will use You will use some of these, or maybe all of them. It depends. And the outputs will be detailed resource requirements for each activity. Also, the basis of estimates, you have to explain how you reach these estimates. The resource breakdown structure. We have different breakdown structures in project management. The common one that now you know about is work breakdown structure, but also the resource breakdown structure. So these activities, how we will allocate different resources. And you will update some of the documents that you used earlier based on the new calculations that you did. So any question so far before we take our break? Yes, Muhammad?
Hello, Doctor.
Yes, hi.
I think this model of BMI Institute is different language and different names of requirement and inputs and outputs, different than what we study in our model or book, right? Or
Yes, yes. There are
confused.
some differences. Yes, there are some differences. The PMI is a professional organization. And it's not the only organization for project management. Actually, in Europe, for example, they have the APM, so the Association for Project Management, or managers, maybe. So each of these organization, professional organization, they create body of knowledge to help professionals with the information and knowledge they need. But I like the project management approach, the PMI approach of telling you what inputs do you need, what tools and techniques you might use. That's why some elements in this graph, for example, are not very defined. For example, the organizational process assets. It might include policies and procedures. Maybe the financial or the CFO created guidelines for you to do. So some of these are generic. So
Yes,
did I answer your question?
Yes, I see that, but I meant that should we stick to our book
Yes.
terms and vocabulary?
Yes.
Because I think there are a lot of as you mentioned, Dr. Hanan, a lot of different words than we
Yes.
learned here
Yes.
in this chart.
Yes, stick to the book because this is the official material that you are learning. The PMI guides, these are other literature that's available for you. Maybe your company will not use it. So if for example, if your company work with a lot of European countries, they might adapt the European terminologies. So remember when we were talking about project management methodologies, and I told you, for example, in Europe, they call it formal and informal. And they mean the same thing. So formal are predictive methods, informal are adaptive. So I don't want to confuse you. So stick with the book.
Yes.
But these are some extra material that, you know, it's good to know that there are different ways to describe the same thing.
Okay, thank you, Doctor.
Yeah.
Because when I start to study the book, I feel it's so simple and easy. And when I
Yes.
studied the BMI body of knowledge, I hit myself and I hit the project.
No.
So
Don't
when I saw
hit.
this, I remembered input and output and the process. I all
Yeah,
these items is very difficult. I think it's for project of NASA.
No, it's not for project. Actually, I can apply this in my pizza night project
Yes,
at
yes.
home. Yeah. So no, don't read the PMI book now. Start with this, because in the book it explained to you how actually you apply this. The BIM book doesn't explain much. Actually, right now I'm working with the PMI on a project to rewrite the risk management guide.
Mm.
And some of the inputs from the project managers across the world is that there are no examples, enough examples. So I included a case study in the guide, and I used this case study to give some examples.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's have okay, here is maybe a question. Okay. Uh,
No, it's same.
project.
I write before I talk. The
Oh,
same
yeah.
question.
So project management for NGOs, non-governmental organizations. As I said, there are different guides, different ways to do project management, and different organizations. And each organization have their certifications. You have to study their material. So it depends on the industry that you work in. Okay, so it's 11:08, so let's come back at 11:17. And we will continue our discussion. Okay, so as I was saying, eh, there are several organizations, and remember, these are professional organizations. These are not academic organizations. So, and it depends on the field that you are working in. So, for example, someone works in the IT sector. There might be some certifications that's more valuable in your sector than a project management certification. Um, uh, we added project management to the MBA because right now, uh, more and more organizations have projects, and even if you are working in operational functions, you might be involved in a project. Sometimes the organization might not call something a project. They might call it something else. For example, like initiative. So we are having this initiative to change something, to develop something, or to introduce something. If you are working in marketing, for example, they might call it a campaign. So a campaign is a project. Once you have a start date, an end date, and unique result that you are working in, you have a project, even if it doesn't have the title project. I worked with some non-government organizations and community and civil organizations. They don't call it project, but I found that they have programs. And actually, I was talking to an executive director, and I told her, what you call a program, it's actually a project. And she said, no, it's a program. And I started to explain the difference between a program and a project. So what she called a program in her organization was actually um, has the characteristics of a project. It has a start date and end date. It has a very unique result, and they got a budget or a fund from some funding organization to perform certain program in even a certain location. But they call it a program. But at the end of the day, we applied project management principles, not program management principles, because they call it something else. Okay, so I don't know if your moms did this. You open the fridge and you find a box for cheese. You open it and it has some zucchini or something. So the container is says cheese, but the contents is zucchini. So back to estimating costs and times. So here's a simplified basic function point count process for a prospective project or deliverable. So we have certain elements. Don't worry about this, but we have a low point and we have a high point and we have an average. So these are some of the approaches that that we use. Not necessarily that you will use these approaches, but again, and this is included here because there is an example in your textbook, and this is how you will do these calculations. So if you have some time, go through the example given and go through how they calculated this. Here's another way to range estimates. So you have a range, so the cost might be within this range. So again, you have a low estimate, you have high estimate, and you have average estimate. And again, the exact number might be a number between these low and high limits. Here is when you base your estimation based on different phases. And here you might use different methodologies. So within the phase of identifying the needs, you do something. So across the all phases of the project, they are using macro estimate. And if you remember, macro is top down. When we have more information about the specification, we move from the macro to detailed estimates. In the design, so the first part, the second part, we are still using top down because we don't have enough information. But once we finalize the specification, we might have more information. So we can do some detailed estimates and so on. So you might have different ways that you use for your estimate based on the changes in the inputs. And one of the factors is also the level of detail. So as I said, for your project, you will go only to the 5th level. So maybe this is not enough for you to calculate the estimates. So maybe you will need to have more layers in your work breakdown structure to be able even to have a rough cut calculations. And again, the level of detail will depend on the complexity of the project, the need to control certain aspects. So for example, in government, they need to control so much elements in the project. And also you need to have enough details, the right amount of details. Excessive detail might complicate your work, might lead to unproductive or non-value adding work that you are doing, and it will not affect the estimates or the accuracy of your estimate that much. But at the same time, if you don't have the adequate level of details, you might do some mistakes in your calculations, and you might not have accurate estimates. So this is the way we do it. So we have the project and we divide the project into deliverables. And again, this is the way I want you to do it. Maybe in another project or another organization, you will go phase-based work breakdown structure. But for the sake of this course and to unify the approach in all the groups, I want you to start with the deliverables, okay? And you will divide all these deliverables until you reach the work packages. And inside the work packages, you will have different activities. And remember, we had even a dictionary for the work packages to explain what is this work package. Is it dependent on another work package or another task? And more details about each work package and each activity. So also, you need to understand that you will have different types of costs. You will have direct costs. So these are chargeable and they are specific to a specific work package. So for this work package, who will work on this? How much do they get paid per hour? How many hours they will work on this work package? Are there any materials? Are there any third-party software, for example, they will use? Are there any equipment? Are there any direct inputs to this work package? So these are direct costs. Also, we have direct project overhead costs. So these costs are tied to the project in general. Some work packages will use certain project costs, and some project costs will be divided across all the work packages. For example, the project manager salary. Maybe we have a project coordinator, a temporary rental space, maybe for the project team. Some supply that everyone is using. Some specialized machinery that might be used in different activities. So usually there is someone in the team, in the project team, is dedicated to these cost-related tasks. And I believe even those from the financial sector or background, they learn a certain way of accounting for projects. Also, we have general and administrative overhead costs. So again, these are not linked to a specific project, but again, it will be linked to, or part of this will be linked to the project you are managing. For example, if we have a project management office, so maybe part of the cost of running this project management office will be divided or distributed among the projects that we are managing. or we are doing advertisements, so we might allocate part of the advertisement costs into different projects, or accounting, or of course the senior management and all the costs accrued through senior management. So anything above the project level, the company might divide it among the different projects. So again, each company will have its way of creating cost centers. For the sake of your group assignment, consider the direct costs. Okay? Yes, there will be, know that there will be direct project overhead costs, but for the sake of this assignment, focus only on the direct costs. But know that in real life, there are other costs that we will include. Some of them are direct, some of them are indirect, or sometimes we call it fixed and variable. Another way to call costs. So this is how, for example, they calculated this. So, and you can see here, sometimes the overhead, we calculate it as a percentage. Okay. So maybe in the guidelines in your organization, they have this way of allocating overheads. So we are allocating 20% of the general and administrative overhead on any of our projects throughout the year, for example. Or they might be tied to the size of the project. So, for example, if I have a small project, shall I add 20% on a small project and 20% of the overhead on a big project? So there might be some way to tie the percentage to the size of the project. So at any time, you will have 3 types of the cost, or 3 views of the cost. So the committed, so this is what the senior management allocated for the project. The actual cost that you are spending on different activities, so how much actually it costs you, and the scheduled budget. So the scheduled budget in this point, and you can see that there might be some differences between these numbers, but at the end they should be all the same. If they are all the same, it means that we don't have an overrun. But in some cases, for example, during the execution, so we scheduled a certain budget, but actually we spent less. Why? Maybe the project manager found a better way to do something, so they saved some of the cost. So along the way, you will find yourself adjusting these estimates, because you might have more information. You might discover that there are certain costs that you did not calculate. And this usually happens when a project manager is a relatively new. So they might not take into consideration certain factors. Or we made our calculations on certain assumptions based on the normal conditions, but actually something happened. For example, during the pandemic, many organizations had to adapt to the government mandates, and this affected how they manage the different projects. So, for example, we had a construction site near our building, and before the pandemic, there were buses having laborers were working different shifts. But when the pandemic hit, the construction site was empty, just a few workers working here and there. Or something goes wrong. Maybe a machine got broken and you have to stop working until you fix it. Something very common, changes in the scope. And this usually happens in adaptive methodologies when you don't have enough information about the requirements and you discover more along the way and you keep changing the scope. Or the way we were estimating the numbers were very optimistic. So you know what, the currency rate, exchange rate will not change, or it will change a little bit. But in real life, some economic turbulence happened, or some war somewhere that changed the currency exchange rate a lot. Okay. So you will create a database, and a database means a table, some information, you know. So we create this estimating database to make the life easier. So, for example, we will list all the components that we use in our projects, and we will collect some information, and we will add these database. So the database might include different activities, different components, different operations or processes, and it will make your life easier. Also, some of the information of these elements might be tied to some cost centers in the accounts or with the accounting. So any questions so far? Any question? Okay, yeah. Oh, someone was going to say something and they decided not.
I want to say everything is okay.
Yes, okay, perfect.
I feel
Yes,
a lot of
I
silence,
need
so
this. I need this assurance.
I try to show the thumb up, but I don't found it, so I open mic to say it's okay.
Okay. So now let's move about special cases, you know, the mega projects. So these are the very big projects, and actually these projects might include sub projects inside it. So these are very big projects. They say it's 1 billion or more. It will take many years to complete. So, for example, the pyramids in Egypt is an example for mega projects. The Acropolis in Athens, for example, it's an example for major projects. Also, nowadays, the Olympics or airport or high-speed rail line, for example, or a company developing a new aircraft. So these are very big projects. That's why we call it mega projects. Okay, so the some of the issues around the mega projects, because it spans across many years, and there are some variables that we cannot be 100% sure that they will remain constant. They are constant, not constant. They are variables, but how they will vary, you know. So usually in these projects, they cost much more than expected or calculated, and they under deliver when it comes to benefits. But many of these projects, we have to do it. These are maybe a strategic project. For example, when Vancouver hosted the Winter Olympics, they built so many facilities that was underutilized for many years after the Olympics. Qatar, for example, after hosting the Olympics, also they built so much infrastructure. They built so many buildings and things like that. And people who work in Qatar, and my friends, they told me that many people lost their jobs because, you know, there is no work for them. Many of these facilities are underutilized. So again, usually they go over budget. They under the benefits are under deliver. And of course, the costing is different. And here is a way of forecasting costs when you have such a project or a big project. So you divide the project into different classes or different reference class that is somehow similar to your potential project. Of course, if you are doing the same thing, that will be much more easier. For example, maybe Qatar, when they are building something for the Olympics, they used another country's experience with the Olympics as a reference. Okay. In real life, you might do the same. So, for example, I moved to a new house, and I had some work in my old house, so I might use these projects as a reference. And you collect and you arrange the data, and you create a distribution of cost overruns as a percentage. So that's why I sometimes call it the safety factor. So when we used to do some mechanical designs, we used to include some safety factors. And our professor told us the Americans' way, for example, is having a less safety factor than the Russians. So that's why the machines or the cars coming from Russian designers, they were heavy and cumbersome compared to the American ones. And you use these data distribution. So we create some charts to use it in the forecast, so we somehow approximate into a more realistic forecast. And see this realistic, it's not real, it's realistic, it's approaching the level of being real. The benefit of using this this way is that you might have ways to mitigate the human errors or the human bias. especially when you work on certain projects that have some political aspect, or maybe at a nation's level, or very strategic, or have some stakeholders with influence more than other um, 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 stakeholders. So you want to try to find a way to deal with these risks, because this influence might create a risk of being over optimistic. We use also this way when we want to create a reality check for funding large projects. So we need to actually have some realistic forecast of what the cost of such a project. So it will affect, of course, the funding of the project. And also we use it to create the contingency funds and the management reserve. So this is an illustration of this method. So for past projects, we create a database. We divide these projects into different classes, maybe based on common characteristics. And then we use these different classes to compare the planned costs versus the real cost. And we create these statistical charts, so we can use it to create the safety factor based on the type of error or bias in the data that we will create. And we use this for new projects. So when I'm working on a new project, I can refer to these charts to create the expected costs and the cost charting and all of this. So the expected cost will be the planned cost based on the information I have, and a safety factor or an error margin that I got from the charts that I built based on the previous projects. Usually this is for big projects or mega projects, so the governmental agencies. So this MetroLink, actually, they study the metro projects across the world. And they found, of course, they study so many projects, so they can create some charts to help project managers cost for similar projects. So here's also when we talked about using different different ways to forecast the cost. So here's an approach called the multi-stage approach. So we divide the project into stages, and within the stage, we might start with a rough cut estimate, and then once we progress with the project, we will have more information, so we can add some more. And we can have different methods used in the same stage. So we start with a design development, then we do some base cost estimates, then we include the risk analysis, then we do some reference class forecasting, and then we share all this information with the experts, and the expert will say their judgment, and then we will analyze the costs benefit compared to the expected benefit. So I just collected from some of the project management software and project management applications some screenshots of how actually the project looks like using these applications. So you can see here Gantt chart. We will talk about Gantt charts when we talk about the schedule next week, I believe next week or maybe the week after. But we have the different tasks and how long each task will take. And also the Gantt chart will show us which task is dependent on which tasks that I can start at the same time, which output is an input to another task. So the more visuals you have in your project, the more you can understand relationships between different elements. Here is another one. Again, planned start, planned resource cost, planned. Why we have this? Because we have actual. So for this work breakdown structure for one of these packages, we have planned to start it on 23rd of January. And it's planned to take 6 hours. And it's planned to cost 540. Later, we might find that we couldn't start it on the 23rd. We had to wait for certain input or something, so we started actually on the 24th. It didn't take 6 hours. We managed to do it in 4 hours, for example, and this made the actual cost less than this. In some other work packages, the planned might be different than the actual, and the actual might be more. So that's why at any point you need to have some snapshot of the performance of your project and to see exactly where are you. Here is another way of calculations. So you might create these tables in your projects in order to calculate the cost. So for example, this item, the man hours usually, so this is the norm. So this is if they are working under normal conditions. This is the cost. And productivity factors. So you might have some workers more productive than other workers, or some days, or you are productive more than other days. And you can calculate the man hours that is required for each of these items. Here is again, we are doing certain scenarios, different scenarios. You might do the 3-point forecasts or estimates. So the optimistic, the pessimistic, and the realistic. You might do some changes in the scenarios. So, okay, assuming that we will use our existing platform, for example. And another scenario that, no, actually, we will create a new platform from scratch. So how much this will cost and how much this will cost. Or a scenario that includes, for example, outsourcing part of the work. And the other scenario is we will do the work ourselves in-house. Some scenario is based on renting certain equipment. Some other scenario is based on leasing. So what's the difference between renting and leasing? So this is short term, this is long term. So leasing might cost us less on the long run. So you might need to create these different scenarios when you are doing budgeting or even costing. Here is another one. These are comparing different projects. So for example, these are different projects, and you can have a snapshot comparing different projects. Here is again, maybe this is the actual and the planned. So you can see if you are over budget or under budget, or behind schedule, or where are you exactly. So any question? Any question? I told you we will finish today early. So I think you can use this time meeting and discussing what you need to do. Any question regarding the individual assignment or the group assignment? And this is a good opportunity to remind you to work on your individual assignments.
Professor Angela,
Yes.
I don't have any groups.
Oh, you don't have a group?
Yes, I don't
Oh.
have any group, Professor.
Okay, any group that has 3 students?
Oh, yes.
I'm asking the rest of your colleagues.
Yes, Professor, I will ask.
Yeah, so okay, yes, Ahmed.
Hi, Professor.
Hi.
Actually, we had our group, but I think it is like unnumbered. So, did you start giving groups numbers or something like this, or not yet?
Yes, I want to do this, but till this moment, I don't have the final structure of your groups. So if you can finalize this right now, still some students don't have groups. I want to make sure that everyone has a group. So can you discuss this on what's it called, the WhatsApp, and finalize the groups?
Okay, that's fine. Okay, sure.
Yeah,
We will do so.
yeah. So some of you don't have groups. Please post on the WhatsApp, and those group that has 3 or 4 members, please allow those students who don't have groups to join you. Yeah, someone emailed me that they want to work on their the project by themselves. No, this is a group work. We are studying project management, and project management is all about teamwork. Okay, please finalize today the group formation. So
Someone
you,
make
yes.
a poll, and we can make a group, I think.
Okay, so Chen, are you member in the WhatsApp group?
Yes.
Okay, so please
Present.
post. Yes, please post on the WhatsApp, and make sure to join a group that has 3 members or 4 members.
Yes, Professor.
Okay. Any other question? Any other thing? Issue?
Yes, Doctor, please. And for the already seated group, what does
Mhm.
actually you need from us? The names and the name of the project?
You yes, because I want to create an Excel sheet showing the different groups and the different projects that they are doing.
Okay.
Yes, even if you are working on a project similar to another group's project, it's okay. Every group will do it differently.
Okay. We will send you in private, right?
Yes. So I can create this and post it on Moodle.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
Professor.
yes.
And in the individual assignment, it should be
Mhm.
happen. It should be done in our own organization or in our place like that.
Yes, yes. And some of you have some issues revealing the organization. Don't reveal your organization. Just say, in my company, give it a fictitious name, give the project fictitious name. I just want you to make sure that you understand the different types of projects that organizations have, and the different characteristics of these projects. Yes.
Yeah, and why is not PDF is not accepted?
Yes. Yes. I think, what are the criteria I posted?
No PDF. You said so.
There no PDF? No, there
Yes.
are. No, no, no. I think it was okay. I think I added it into the instruction and the description of the assignment. Okay, where is it? The file, the individual assignment. I think it's posted because many of
I know.
your
So I
colleagues
saw there
have.
that no
Mhm.
PDF.
Yeah, I want it as a Word document. Yeah,
Why? How if we
I
don't have Word document because we cannot subscribe on that? So we are using Google
uh,
and we'll convert it to PDF before we can send it to you.
okay. So when you convert it to a PDF, make sure that I can copy and paste parts of this, because I use it to
Oh,
check for ChatGPT.
oh,
So
I
some of
see.
you, yes, some of you played smart and didn't allow me to copy and paste, but I can crack it, and I can copy and paste whatever text that I have doubts about and check it. So that's why I said Word document.
Oh,
So
yes, because
I, yeah. So
our
if you can,
our Microsoft Word in the university is not working for me, so I'm using Google Docs.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, okay. So, okay, can you email me, remind me to change the setting for the file type?
sure,
So
I will.
yeah, yeah, please. So the system will accept the PDF, and when you save it as a PDF, make sure that it's accessible so I can copy and paste from it. Yes, Ahmed?
Professor, can we referencing or accessing like Google Scholar?
Yes, of course. Yes, I encourage you to access Google Scholar and find um, some references online. Any other question? Okay, so it's a wrap, and please, I encourage you to keep working on your individual assignment, have your meetings with your group. Please, please, some group host a chat with you, and any of you who do not have a group, please post on the WhatsApp. Okay, thank you so much, and I will see you next week. Bye, everyone.